Welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council. Today is September the 7th. My name is Dan Hilmer. I'm serving as mayor this year for the council. May we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Candell,
I'm here.
Councilmember Hara,
I'm here.
Councilmember Paulson,
Here.
Councilmember Way,
Here.
Mayor Hilmer.
Here, if you're able, please join us in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The first item on this evening's agenda is public comment. Are there members of the public that are here this evening that would like to ask questions or make comments on items that are not listed on this evening's agenda? Yes, sir. Could you please step up to the microphone and state your name?
My name's John Proto. I'd like to know about last month's meeting, rent control. What's the latest?
We're going to have a report at the last item on this evening's agenda as a business item from an ad hoc committee of the city council reporting on that issue.
What time will that happen?
I can't tell you. Maybe an hour.
Thank you.
That's my best guess. All right. Are there other members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments on items that are not listed on this evening's agenda? All right, thank you. We'll move to next item this evening is Catherine. Hi.
We do have some.
Oh, I'm
Zoom
sorry.
members.
Would you please see if we have online public comment?
Our first commenter from Zoom will come from Duncan McCandless.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, and I apologize for not remembering our online audience. Welcome.
Well, thank you. You've heard me several times before and I've written you today, but I just want to once again urge you to really deal with the general rent tenancy situation in this town. And in particular, since it's even probably more urgent, the one at Skylark. And that's basically it. And I very much appreciate that this has already been raised to consideration with an ad hoc committee, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm interested to see what the outcomes are going to be, but I hope that they're speedy because it's a situation, I think, for everyone that lives and pays rent for residents anyway, in Larkspur will be interested to know and will be glad to hear a good result. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you.
Allison, are there other members of the public in the queue?
Looking for any additional raised hands, and there's no further comment.
Thanks very much. All right, we will move to an update on the Neighborhood Response Group program by Rachel Kurtz, who's our NRG coordinator. Hi, Rachel, welcome.
All right, do you have a slide? I have the slides. Okay. We'll give it a try. I can't see where I'm advancing to. Come on, you're a pro at this, Rachel.
Okay. All right, well, first I'd like to thank you.
And I'm sorry, Rachel, just so that people can listening can hear you. Just gotta use the mic. That's all.
Okay, is that better? David? Okay. So I'd like to thank everyone for having me this evening. I'll do a very quick update on the NRG program. NRG program stands for Neighborhood Response Group. Hopefully many of you are already very familiar with this program. Obviously, Councilmember Paulson, your role in the Twin Cities Disaster Preparedness Committee and leading that on a monthly basis has been great. And Councilmember Way, with your role on the county's disaster council as well, has been really helpful. So with that, is Chief Martin online? Okay, thank you. So you are the first to actually hear this rather publicly. And I will advance the slide. We just received a grant from CAL FIRE Foundation for $15,000, which we'll be using as part of the NRG program to really work on a pilot program for NRGs for communities that we've had a hard time reaching out to. Some of these are residents in apartments and some are in the mobile home parks. Some require more support in terms of biracial, bicultural supports. So I'm really excited to start working on this program. I'm having some initial conversations with Community Action Marin, as well as others, and also with the state with their Listos program to try to get this off the ground. So really excited to have received this grant. So congratulations. Thank you. So what is the role of the NRG? What we have talked about and for a number of years is that the NRG program is really about establishing a neighborhood network to support one another. So neighbors will help neighbors in the event of a disaster. And it's really about preparing and emergency preparedness. And that has always been our focus. We are not the ones who do evacuations. We're not the ones who do the rescues. We're all about helping neighborhoods be resilient in the event of an emergency. Everyone should know about alerts. Everyone should know about preparing a to-go bag. Everyone should know there are 2 ways to leave their home in the event of a fire. That's the role that we work on with our volunteers. And we have a very strong advisory committee. And many of these names will be very familiar with you. They tend to be the people who are active in just about everything. And so I'm really fortunate to have this group who will always provide direction and guidance and step up when I need help. And we have representation from Green Bay, Larkspur proper, as well as Corte Madera, across Corte Madera. So just some quick facts about the program. Sometimes we forget that this started in 2007. And John and Lee Howard were the founders of this program with the first NRG in Mariner Cove. And they still are actively involved, although they say they're not so active, they are very active. And so we really, a huge round of thanks to them that they started this program and it has continued for so long and has grown. So we have grown from one NRG in Mariner Cove to now we have about the 42 NRGs, about 30 are active. We really do try to track the ones that are not active to see how we can get them moving again. We will take anyone and everyone in a neighborhood who would like to work with us, and because we have established this program, so it's very easy and very accessible to get going. Our funding is not very much. It's only funded my position and everyone else is volunteer. And so that's part of the reason with the grant, we're looking at how we can do some supplemental work with that for particular neighborhoods. It will not be all the existing ones that are already established. This will be for new NRGs that might have a harder time getting going. One of our cornerstones is that we have our drills in the fall and the spring. And these drills are really an opportunity for our block captain network to communicate information to the neighborhood and just check in and see if people know what the story is. There's no test on this slide, I promise. So when you have a really advanced NRG, like Pedro Amazonas and Madrone Canyon, or Green Bay Hills is starting to get more advanced, Mariner Cove, they have a lot of networks and connections and tie-in with CERT. We have the trailers. If anyone sees the emergency trailers around the area, those are part of our programming. And this is actually a diagram of how radio networks work and how the radio system would work if you're not using your phones, you're using a handheld radio, they're trained on that, and they're escalating and communicating a potential issue in an area in their NRGs. And so we have what we've established now as a new node network. And so that is just really a hierarchy for the NRGs. So I talked a little about the NRGs. Very few of the NRGs will in the category of advance. That really takes a lot of commitment and volunteer effort to get that rolling. But we have a lot that are somewhere between level 1 and level 2. And that's great. I mean, we're really, really happy with that. And if someone's really excited to go on to level 3, go, we're happy to support that as well. But our first step is really focusing on that level 1. Within our program, we have worked on establishing goals and how we want to achieve those goals. And so again, being volunteer based, it's as successful as our, volunteer availability and my focus on being able to work on these different activities, but have lots of support, lots of interest. This is the first year, actually, I've been doing this since I came on 4 days before we got under shelter in place for COVID. So I am still meeting people in person. For the first time, it was all done through Zoom and online. So we're happy that we're actually now able to do some things in person, like trainings and practices and all those type of things. So we're ramping up, but we're not 100% there yet. So the NRG model is actually expanding. A lot of communities, not only within Marin County, but actually within the East Bay, have contacted me to understand how the NRG program works and how it can be modeled in other areas. Through those conversations, it's expanded to Ross Valley, where they've hired an NRG leader, as well as Southern Marin. And I think there's actually growing interest to hire additional NRG leaders. But again, it becomes a funding conversation. Some departments and cities, jurisdictions look at it as part of the fire department. Others look at it in other departments. So it really is up to each one. So just to close out, our opportunities is endless, because that we will never stop needing to communicate and prepare people. We live in obviously fire prone area. We live in an known earthquake area. We live in sea level rise areas. So we need to continue to plan and prepare. And so we want to continue working on this program. We have residents who've been here for 60 years, and we have residents who've been here for 2 days. Everyone should know how to be prepared. The biggest challenge, back to the volunteers. It ebbs and flows with how available people are. And there's only so much I can do to spread the word. The best success is neighbor talking to neighbor. And that's what we do with this program, is encourage neighbors to talk to neighbors. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel. Are there questions from the city council regarding the presentation this evening?
I just want to thank you, Rachel. And, I've been involved in this since 2008. So I just wanted to pass on that I'm on the board of Fire Safe Marin, and they just posted a mobile home preparedness guide that has been worked on by Fire Safe Marin. It was just put online recently, so that might be helpful for your work. It's specific to that type of living arrangement. So just to let you know about that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We'll look.
Yeah, and I want to
Please.
thank you too, Rachel. To give a little context, every first Monday of the month, we get together on Zoom. Rachel's always there, 15 to 20 people in the community. It's been just a steady beat of activism and volunteers. And Ruben Martin, if you're on the call, he's yeah, there you go. He's always chiming in when he can. Todd Landau, Mark Brown. So I feel like staff and professionals have really been there, and I love the collaboration between Corte Madera and Larkspur, and also that we're getting the fire professionals and MWPA, and thanks to Rachel, who is kind of a serving triathlete. So she does this, and then she's on the San Rafael City Council, and she's on an MWPA. So we have a really great person who's helping us with all this. So it's good to see the progress, and that we're finally getting together in person. Thank you.
It's well-known and very popular, so it's
Great.
it's part of the community identity now at this point, so that's great.
Great.
Other council member comments or questions? Other members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments regarding the presentation this evening? Anyone online that would like to make comment?
Raised hands from our audience members. I do see Ruben has raised his hand. Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Helmer and members of the city council. I just kind of wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Rachel Kurtz. She took over the program, as she mentioned, at the beginning of the pandemic. So late January, we were having interviews, selected her as the best candidate to kind of champion the NRG program for both the city of Larkspur and the town of Corte Madera, and champion it for the fire department. And she has definitely came onto the program with some challenges. As she mentioned, the pandemic started right when she started, which where she's grown the program over the last 2.5 years has been amazing to see, and to see the growth of the program and how coordinated it's become, especially with the challenges of only meeting people online. So it definitely shows to the true nature and the leadership that Rachel has brought about. So just kind of wanted to recognize her at this time for everything she's doing for us in the community, and for being able to guide all of our active volunteer members in the right direction. So thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chief Martin. Yes, sir, you had a comment? Could you step up to the microphone, please? Sorry, it's for the record.
What mobile home park do you live in? What mobile home park do you live in?
Would you like me to address that question?
Thank you for addressing the mobile home parks.
Sure, no, I don't specifically. I actually live in San Rafael. But my focus is actually any neighborhood. And I do consider anyone who is in apartment complexes, anyone who's in mobile home parks, as established neighborhoods and an opportunity to helping neighbor.
All right, thank you very much. If there are no other members of the public that would like to comment, well, thank you, Rachel, and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the consent calendar. Are there members of the council that would like to remove items from the consent calendar for questions or comment? Are there members of the public that would like to remove items from the consent calendar for further discussion?
Looking for any raised hands from our audience members in the Zoom meeting or in person? There's no public comment.
All right, thank you. I will bring this back to the city council. Is there a motion for?
Mr. Mayor, this is
Yes,
Kevin
sir.
Haroff. I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
We have a motion from Councilmember Hara.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Kendall,
Yes.
Councilmember Hara,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Paulson.
Yes.
Mayor Helmer.
Yes. The consent calendar has been adopted unanimously. The next item on the agenda this evening is the city manager's oral report. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I had a few upcoming calendar items I wanted to highlight for the council and the community. First, our continuing recovery of bringing things back in the city. We are now going to bring back movies in the park, which is pretty exciting for us. And so this Friday, September 9th, we'll be showing The Sandlot. Movie probably start around 7:45, but folks should consider coming out as early as 6:30. They're going to be organizing some wiffle ball games to keep the theme of The Sandlot, if you're familiar with that movie. And we're cautiously optimistic if the pattern we've seen the last 2 days continues, the heat will probably break by that point in the day. So please come on out to Piper Park and enjoy the evening with the community. And then some folks may be interested on Monday, September 12th from 5:30 to 7. PG&E is offering a virtual town hall for the North Coast. It's going to be talking about some of the initiatives that they're doing in the North Coast area. We encourage folks who are interested in topics to check that out. We provided a link to this in the last city manager newsletter, and you can get more information directly on PG&E's website. And then lastly, on the 15th and 20th of September, the Resilient Neighborhoods program here in Marin is going to be offering climate action workshops, and folks may be interested in that. It's a workshop this group's organizing to really encourage folks to look at their own carbon footprint, what they can easily do within their own home to make adjustments to help combat the effects that we're feeling from climate change. So more information can be found again in the recent newsletter, which is posted on our website. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. Are there questions for the city manager from the council regarding his report? Are there members of the public that would
I have a
like to
quick
ask?
question.
Oh, Vice Mayor
Yeah,
Paulson, please.
Thank you. Dan, I was wondering, just real quick, any update on the library grant?
No.
Nothing.
All radio silence.
Okay, thank you.
Are there members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments regarding the city manager's oral report this evening?
Looking for any raised hands from our audience members. There's no public comment.
Thank you very much. We'll move to council members' oral reports and comments this evening. Are there reports from council members?
I have.
Councilmember Way.
Since we only had one meeting last month, I just wanted to catch everybody up on the Central Marin Fire Council and the Central Marin Police Authority Council meets quarterly, and we met on August 11th. So that was between our last meeting and now. Pretty standard, straightforward things for the Police Council, and that information is available online. The Fire Council, I thought, had a really fascinating presentation about the new Fire Academy. It's a collaborative approach that's been taken between many of the fire departments within Marin County to run a very comprehensive academy that they are trying to do to recruit competent firefighters to our community. And there was a great presentation about it, and we were able to recruit from that 3 new firefighters for Central Marin Fire. I thought that the presentation by Jeff, who was one of our firefighters, who was one of the instructors, was a really good example of how we can collaborate with our other fire departments to try to do a robust training. So appreciated that. Lastly, I attended the South Alicio Community Advisory Group meeting again. For all those who are familiar, that's the Project Home Key project that's happening on South Alicio. And because of some community concerns, they started a community advisory group last year, and we've been meeting monthly. And also I'm part of the public safety subcommittee for that. But those who are familiar with this program, it's on South Alicio, and it's going to be a long-term supportive housing for 43 previously homeless adults. ECS, which is the Ecumenical Society organization that is running it, closed on the property. So the property's been purchased. There's construction fencing now up, and they are on track to open in 2023. They also got a $6 million some $6 million construction cost grant and $260,000 for mental health needs additional grant. So this group meets, it's a robust group, and we've been meeting several times a month, and now we're going to be meeting once a month. And although those are not available online, those meetings for the public to attend, all of the report outs are. So if you're interested in the South Alicio property and what the community advisory group is doing for Project Home Key, you can find that on their website. There is a legal case still open about the property and as regards to its environmental exemptions. And they were supposed to hear opening arguments on the 5th. And so I don't know what the results are of that. But I'll keep everybody updated. I'm on the Public Safety Committee, and that seems to be one committee that continues to push forward with some ideas of making sure the neighborhood is well informed about what the project is going forward with. So thanks.
Thank you. Other council member reports? Vice Mayor Paulson.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to try to keep brief to report outs on the committees I'm on. So following up with what Rachel was talking about, for many of us, fire safety is on the top of our minds. So the NRGs are kind of volunteer neighbor to neighbor response groups. Another really big effort is Measure C, or MWPA. And so earlier this month, they gave us a tour of perhaps what's most relevant in that $20 million a year effort to our community here in Larkspur. And that's creating the Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. So what it is it's a big, basically you can think of it as a moat of sorts, 38 miles going around Ross and Fairfax and Larkspur and San Anselmo, and it's 200 feet wide. And what it'll do is, if you can imagine all the stuff we've seen on TV with these huge catastrophic flames, if you create a 200-foot break, you can really slow down the fire for the professionals to get in. You know, time is everything when you're fighting a fire. So they're basically doing about 12 or 13 miles a year. So this year we got kind of lucked out with the drought, and we have a heat wave, but we're getting about 13 miles done, and then next year another 13. So for me, I'm just counting down the clock as another form of safety and security against something that we know is a real threat to our community. So it's great to be a part of that. And one other thing is, about 20,000 homes have been contacted for defensible space in Ross Valley. So even if there's a fire, it doesn't mean you have to lose your home or lose your life. And creating defensible space by best practices is really something I love everybody here and who's listening and in general for the community to consider. But we've got 20,000 people already, so that's a real a point of pride and joy for that measure and what's happening. The other thing, and I see that we have our planning director here and Kevin, we're on the housing element committee. And I mentioned during our meetings, I wanted to just at least let our council members know what's going on, because we've got this big document we're going to plop on the desk and submit in December. And just, I'll give kind of a personal, 30-second thing. And I hope Councilmember Haroff can chime in, or we can hear more from Director Simonian. But so far we've been working with a template developed by Opticos. It's allowing us to continue planning largely for multifamily housing in a way that's going to be more objective and streamlined. So we've worked through about half of it, and we're continuing to work through it. From my perspective, some of the major issues that may be interesting to the council here and to the community are the height of buildings, the massing of buildings, parking, crafts and materials. So some of these things really are going to come up. If you think about, WinCup or, a Tam Ridge, there was a lot of controversy in Corte Madera. That's kind of a template of how communities can get concerned about multifamily housing. And those are some of the issues we're working through. So, so as to give you an early lead, that's what we're talking about, thinking about. And I hope at the next council meeting to bring more information. So more to come, and it's a great working group, and we really have some good architectural people, technical experts, and I have some, hope that this is going to be good for the community as well. So thank you.
Other council member reports this evening.
Mr. Mayor, it's Kevin
Councilmember
Haroff,
Hara,
if I could. Partly because I was just invited to comment on our housing element discussion, and I appreciate Vice Mayor Paulson's comments on that. This is a work in progress. I don't want to give an impression that it's just a very straightforward process. It's a complicated process, and I think there are lots of perspectives that need to be incorporated into the discussion as we kind of work our way through the development of a final product. And it's going to be very, very important for the public to be involved in that discussion. And that's in the works. I think Vice Mayor Paulson advertised that appropriately. And I think that's just something folks need to keep in mind. This is not a straightforward process. It's complicated, it's difficult. It really is important for us to have community involvement as we work towards the end of it, to make sure that we are developing plans that are respectful of community interests. And I think that's where we are. So that was just a lead off from the Vice Mayor's comments. On a lighter note, I want to advertise the fact that this Saturday is a big deal for us in the community. It's our Larkspur Chamber of Commerce 10th Annual Downtown Larkspur Wine Stroll, starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. This is going to be a terrific event. We had it, I guess last year it was a terrific success. It's going to be even better this year. The stroll is going to run down Magnolia Avenue from Perry's to Left Bank. We have 23 wineries participating this year, which is more than we have ever had for this event. We're also going to have music at each end of the event. So I think it's going to be really exciting, and I hope everyone in our community comes out and enjoys the event. In the interest of full disclosure, the cost is going to be $40 per person, and you must be 21 or over to taste. IDs will be required, but this is an event that will support our business community within the city of Larkspur, and it's just a terrific opportunity for us to all get together on a late summer evening and enjoy our downtown district and our fellowship with our neighbors. And I hope everyone comes out. I'll be there. That's it.
Thanks very much, Kevin. If there are no other council member reports, we'll close that item and move to public hearings this evening. We have one public hearing. This is an appeal of the Planning Commission decision to approve an application for a design review FAR exception at 355 Bertano Way. Let's see. The applicant is Mr. Jokum. Is he here this evening? The property owner, and Mr. Jokum is he's the architect. Okay. All right. May we have a staff report?
You. The project site at 355 Bertana Way is a 7,500 square foot lot in the Green Brae subdivision, and the site is developed with a single-story, 3-bedroom residence. The applicant submitted a design review and floor area exception application for an 847 square foot second-story master bedroom and office addition on the west side of the single-story residence. The design included a balcony on the west side elevation that extended 2 feet into the required 6 foot side yard setback, which is allowed by the zoning code. The proposed addition would result in a residence totaling 3,132 square feet with a 0.42% FAR, where 2,783 square feet and 0.37 floor area ratio are permitted by code. The addition otherwise meets all other zoning standards, including height limits, setbacks, and lot coverage. The Planning Commission considered the project on July 26th. Appellant Michelle Jolene Giraldi submitted written correspondence to the Planning Commission requesting conditions to reduce noise impacts from construction, but the appellants did not attend the hearing. The staff recommended approval of the project with removal of the second-story terrace. Staff expressed concern that the terrace could significantly impact the privacy of the occupants at 345 Bertano Way, since the balcony would be 4 feet from the shared property line, would provide views of the neighboring property's rear yard and windows, and there's no existing vegetation to obscure the views. The Planning Commission supported the proposed design and specifically considered the balcony. Planning commissioners noted that bedroom balconies are seldom used, and views from the terrace would primarily be straight ahead and not down towards the neighbor's yard. The Planning Commission recommended that the balcony be reduced in size, and Planning Commissioner Brock Wagstaff suggested reducing the depth of the balcony so that the roof could wrap around the front of the balcony. The revised plans submitted to the council by the applicants did reduce the depth of the balcony as required, but not enough to continue the roof around the front of the balcony. The neighbors at 345 Bertano Way appealed the decision to the city council. The appellants are concerned that the second-story addition will impact their light, air, and solar access. The city council must find that the project is compatible with neighbors and also find that the proposed structure or addition avoids significant and unreasonable loss or interference with privacy, light, and solar access. As stated, the Planning Commission required the second-story balcony to be reduced in size, and the project employs other techniques to reduce the massing of the second-story addition, including stepping back the addition from the ground story by about 5 feet for a total setback of over 11 feet. The plate height of the walls of the upper level are 8 feet 1 inch, which is the standard height. The upper level office window is large, but it's set back from the shared property line and faces the roof of the adjacent residence. But there is a large window in the approved stairwell that allows views towards 345 Bertano Way. However, since people are unlikely to stand in the stairway, it's unlikely to result in significant privacy impacts to the neighbor. Staff recommends that the city council deny the appeal and uphold the planning commission's approval of the project by adopting the resolution attached to the staff report as Exhibit A. Alternatively, the city council can grant the appeal in part and require modifications to the design. For example, the city council could require elimination of the terrace or a further reduction in the size of the terrace. And the council may also grant the appeal and overturn the planning commission decision with direction to staff to return to a future meeting with appropriate findings. Or the council could continue the item tonight and request additional information from the applicant, appellant, or staff. The appellants and the applicant and project architect are here this evening and have presentations, so they have the plans and photos to review with you. And that concludes my report unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Elise. First, I'd like to recognize the appellant. I apologize for not recognizing them at the beginning. Mr. Giraldi and Ms. Giraldi. And we will let you lead off with presentations if you'd like. But first, I'd like to offer an opportunity for council members to ask questions regarding the staff report. Are there any council member questions? All right. You may proceed, Mr. Giraldi.
Thank you to the council for hearing our appeal today. I am Anthony Giraldi, son of Michael and Marie, who have asked me to represent them in this appeal. My father is here today, as is my wife, Christina. In 1978, our family purchased the house at 345 Britannia Way in Greenbrae. Current residents of the house are my mother, Father Michael, and sister Michelle, who, after previously commuting from her home in Tahoe to stay often with my parents, moved in full-time at the beginning of the pandemic, March 2020, to watch over their health. Let me start by saying it has never been our intention to be difficult or unneighborly with the Malachowskis. There was a misunderstanding in our family as to the scope of their project, and we feel it's important to address. A brief history as to why we're here today, now. A few months ago, Lauren Malachowski approached my mother in the front of our house with the idea that the Malachowskis were looking to add a second story to their house. Lauren presented my mom with a one-page flyer containing a brief overview of the project and an image showing a forwardly placed addition to the second story. The visual appeared like additions recently made at 85 and 95 Alicio Drive, just 1 block away. That's in the photographs on the slide 1. As for my involvement, for 2 years, I was asked to keep my distance from my parents due to the prospects of them contracting COVID at their senior age. I would visit, something like quarterly, for my niece and nephew's birthday parties held in my parents' backyard, but only if I entered through the side gate and never entered the house. Pre-pandemic, I would spend as much time at their house as possible. I truly love it. Wouldn't you know, the second week of June of this year, 2022, my mother fainted and was taken to Marin General in an ambulance. She had contracted COVID. My father tested positive as well. She spent 3 nights in the hospital under evaluation. Of course, this meant I had to stay away a bit more. Around the 24th or 25th of July, I was able to visit her and my father. I entered the side gate and into the backyard to greet her. I looked up and saw the posts on top of the neighbor's roof. I asked my mother, what is going on with those posts? She replied, they are adding a second story. I asked if she was okay with it and if she had seen the plans. She said she hadn't felt like getting involved and that Lauren told her it's just like yours and all the other neighbors signed off on it. 2 neighbors from across the street signed off. My mother told Lauren she couldn't sign it because it might upset my sister. So I asked Michelle. Michelle said she had not seen plans, but did reach out to the city about her concern of ongoing construction noise, something that triggers migraines for her and has been constant due to other projects on our street for more than 5 years. These conversations sparked an interest into the actual plans for the project. Apparently, the original hearing was held the next day on July 26th, and Michelle was able to pull up the notes of that meeting with plans attached. We got together and immediately identified a terrace built into the plans, hovering right over our yard with a direct view into our kitchen and family room. We initiated today's appeal. Our concern over the terrace should come as no surprise to all involved in the project. It was noted in the original hearing that the council was concerned. The architect understood the concern, the surveyor was suspicious, and when other neighbors who are 50+ yards away opposed the original positioning of the terrace, their request for change was granted and the terrace ended up on our side. The approved plans call for this terrace to now sit 9 feet above our yard and 3 to 5 feet from our property line, far closer than 50 yards. On September 1st, 2022, I was sent an email from the city of Larkspur containing the staff report. I note that in that report, as part of the July 26th Planning Commission meeting, Acting Chair Tauber stated that staff raised privacy concerns with respect to the deck and making it smaller does not change that. So I informed the Malachowskis of our concern. I expressed a desire to resolve the concern without the need for today's appeal hearing. I informed them that I would need to pursue the appeal with the city on a parallel track simply as a backup in case we couldn't resolve it amongst ourselves. During this time, in early August, I met with Lauren and walked her into our backyard and through our concern. I felt she was deeply understanding and open to working together to rectify the privacy intrusion. We left our conversation with her needing to relay the notes of our discussion to James. Totally understandable. A day or two later, James approached our building where he was met by Michelle and encountered my mother. From what I hear, this was a bit confrontational, but I wasn't there, so I can't speculate. Later that night, I received a phone call from James where we discussed all that has happened, where we're at, and where we each see things going. I told him I understand his frustrations and anger over our tardy involvement in the process, but I was taken aback by his threats to the neighborhood. I expressed to him, just as I had to Lauren, the desire to expeditiously resolve the concerns and avoid today's hearing. That didn't happen. In the weeks, possibly over a month now, since I last spoke to Lauren and/or James, our family has had more time to identify potential concerns about the broader scope of the project. You see, my parents are simple people, both well into their 70s now. Neither has traveled further than Washington State or Arizona in the past 50 years. They are not world travelers. They are not wanderers. Aside from trips to Bonaire or getting takeout from Roma Antica or Don Antonio, they are homebodies. Their home is their sanctuary. Their joy comes from watching their grandkids play basketball in the yard and reading a book in the sun. The second story plans at 355 will greatly impact their way of life. The sun will rise in the east, blocked by this new addition. It will rotate to the south, casting a shadow over the yard. By comparison, as in the slide shown here, we have a second story on our house, built before we moved in 44 years ago. Our second story aligns with the building at 337 Bertano on the other side. It has one small window on that side and does not extend past their airspace into their yard. The proposal at 355 is not like the building relationship between 345 and 337 and is out of character for the neighborhood. It should be noted that when 337 wanted to build a second story, 331 behind opposed it, and therefore it was never built. Moreover, James' words that he might just Airbnb the house to terrorize the neighborhood has us now concerned with who may be coming and who may be going, hovering over our house, peering into our lives. For the reasons of privacy intrusion, solar access, architectural consistency within the neighborhood, and that the project may, in fact, not serve to maintain and enhance the use of the property as a single-family residence within a designated single-family residential district, we ask that the council overturn the approval of this project. Thank you.
Are there questions of the appellant from the city council?
Yeah.
This
I
is
have some
Councilmember
questions.
Candell.
Thank you for that presentation. I appreciate that. My understanding is you are concerned about the height blocking the sun. What is your solution? They not be allowed to put any second story?
I'm not an architect, but if I were to consider a solution that could potentially work, it would be a second story that does not go past the roof of our kitchen. Therefore, it would not intrude into the airspace of the backyard.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand it. I heard you say that you were concerned the sunrise was going to be blocked by their second story and things like that. Wouldn't it still be blocked if it didn't intrude into your yard?
If we were to refer back to the pictures.
You can pop the picture back if it helps you explain it.
Actually, here is a fairly decent representation. If you get the picture on the left of the screen, this is from our yard looking directly into the property over at property. The plans that I've seen for this show a second story addition extending all the way back to from the right to the left on top of that roof line you see. On the very far right of this picture, you'll see the roof line of our kitchen attached to the yard. The sunrise is in the east. We're looking due east. The sunrise comes up, blocked by the new addition. If the addition were shorter, the sun has a chance to rise up, rotate at its height, come down in an angle, bypass an addition that wouldn't extend past the kitchen roof line. And therefore, it would be a different.
Okay, I'm sorry, let me just follow.
And again, I'm no architect. I don't know how,
All right, tell me about the concerns about the deck. You had mentioned, because I'm curious about that. If you have a rendering or a picture where you can show, I think your concern was that somebody standing on the deck would be able to look inside your kitchen. Is that accurate?
So bottom left picture, you'll see essentially where the deck will be located on the roof.
Right.
Above our fence.
Okay.
And you'll note that from there, you look down to the left directly into our kitchen, which is the picture on the larger picture on the left. You see my mother sitting on the couch watching TV.
And just so I understand, if the deck were not there and somebody were looking out the window behind the deck, they'd still have the same view, wouldn't they?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, I don't need any questions.
Other council member questions?
So
Councilmember Way?
just to follow up on Scott Candell's question, there's another image here that's also in our packet that shows a view allegedly from where this location is, and I can't see into the kitchen. So I don't, that's a packet that was given to us. So
Where? are the pictures?
I guess we'll get to that. Those are from. So just so we have conflicting views of what's going on, but we can get into more details.
This is a much different perspective than the perspective of the proposed.
Okay, so maybe I'll get to that when the
Yeah.
property owner or their representative mentions these photos. But what I wanted to ask you was the letter that was shown by the neighbors to all the other neighbors, and dated April 19th. In our packet, it's on page 32, which is a Dear Neighbor letter. And that shows the image of the structure, the second story there, and the deck on the left side. That's the one that that was apparently shown to your mother?
That's the one that was shown.
Okay, and that does show a deck, and I mean, it does show a balcony area there, and it does show the overhang on there.
From what I've been told, she did not understand the scope of
Okay.
this guy, 73 years old.
Okay.
bifocals, the whole deal.
So I went by the property yesterday, and I know the story poles are down, and I know the reason why the story poles are down. But it looks like about 90% of the neighborhood has a second story. About, including the property your family owns, has a second story. So just making an apples to apples comparison, it looks like this is not an unusual elevation or structure in your neighborhood.
I think as Mr. Kendall had asked, I do think there's likely a second story addition that would have less of a privacy impact on us.
So in regards to the privacy impact, one of the things that was brought to the planning commission was that concern. And so they recommended reducing the terrace balcony, doing a wraparound, et cetera. So they heard that concern and from what I understand, and suggested those changes, and they were made by the architect for this property. Is that correct?
From my understanding of the notes of July 26th, that's what happened.
So they were,
As we know from the backstory here, we were not involved in the July 26th
Yeah.
hearing. Perhaps if we were, that would have been something we would have requested more detail.
Yeah.
into.
I just wanted to see that the planning commission did hear that concern and worked with the architect and the property owner. It sounds like to make a modification that
Right,
way.
and as I noted, I'm sorry, I didn't write down the page number, but Vice Chair Tauber did mention that, and that's a quote from that report, that reducing the size would not in fact satisfy the privacy concern. Staff raised privacy concerns with respect to the deck, and making it smaller does not change that.
Because the window is still there or the access to the balcony is still there?
I didn't,
Okay.
that's not my quote, that's a quote from Vice Chair of the Council, Vice Chair Tauber.
And I appreciate your concerns about light, air, and solar access. I'm not sure we have in our ordinances, and maybe this is something our planner Simonian can tell us, whether we actually have those as indicators of whether something can be built or not built. We don't have a view ordinance, and maybe you can clarify for me.
Is that a question for the planning director?
I just want to make sure I'm, I
Community
know,
Development Director, excuse me.
yeah. I know Larkspur does not have a view ordinance. What is our,
There is a design review finding that has to be made that says, yep, you must find that the proposed structure or addition avoids significant and unreasonable loss of interference with privacy, light, and solar access.
okay. And the
Thank you.
commission did not find that this addition makes that.
Right, they found that the addition was fine with the reduced second story balcony.
And it did not make a significant difference in the light, air, and solar access.
Correct.
Okay.
They made
They
that
made the finding.
They made that finding. Okay, I'm just checking. Thank you for that information.
Vice Mayor Paulson, do you have questions?
Yeah, just a few.
Let's try to keep it to questions. We're going to bring us back for discussion.
Yeah, just a few clarifications. So I'm trying to track the issues. And by the way, thanks for all the info. And I wish I had been able to go to the property, but I only had a day's notice. So it sounds like in order of importance, there's privacy, there's light, and then there was something earlier that I believe it's your sister, Michelle. Yeah, was saying that she was worried about construction noise. So kind of going from the bottom, I'm hoping that you know, the applicants, the Malachowskis can talk about construction noise because we haven't talked about that. On the light issue, if you can go back to the slide, I'm just trying to get a little perspective. So the sun, we're looking right now at 355, right? And facing east. And so if we put a second story, we're adding 10 feet and the sun moves about 10 feet in an hour. So you're going to get about an hour extra shade in the morning. And then after that, you have absolutely nothing blocked at noon, nothing blocked in the evening. Does that sound about right? Because you live there. I wasn't there.
Yeah, you know, I haven't done a scientific, it sounds like you have more knowledge of the rotation of the sun than I do, but
But I mean, you live there, you know, that tree casts a shadow. So it's going to be shorter than that tree. And your backyard is going to have about an hour of extra shade. Does that sound about right?
the concern is the rising sun directly to the east.
Okay, so you won't see the sunrise for about an hour, but after that. And on the privacy, which way, I'm not an architect, but looking at the drawings, I'm seeing the width of the house going from that tree to a little bit to the right of the chimney. They're proposing about half of that. And the weighting of it, is it going to be to the north or to the south? Yeah, I mean, because you're saying this is going to peer into your window, so I'm wondering what you're envisioning is going to happen.
From my understandings of the renderings that I've seen, the addition basically
The architects here.
moves all the way from the chimney back to where you see those white pipes begin to bend
Okay,
on the roof.
and then the railing and the outside deck would be facing towards you, the westward?
It would be sitting just, from the renderings that I've seen, it would be sitting just on top of the fence, on top of the.
Okay, and I heard the architects here, so I think that's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Haroff, do you have questions of the appellant?
No, I don't have questions. I've already pretty much formed my view on what's the appropriate outcome of this. So let's go forward.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes, sir. I have one more question. You said that nobody from your group was at the July 26th hearing.
That's correct.
I was curious why. Did you get notice of the hearing?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that was really an opportunity for you to express your
That's right.
concerns.
That was sort of what this whole backstory was about, correct? So yeah, my mother was a little uncertain about the scope of this project. She was trying to be friendly, neighborly with the Malachowskis. She had a relationship with Miss Lauren Malachowski. And she simply did not pursue it up till June, which is when she fell ill, and then sort of all bets were off after that second week of June. She wasn't feeling well, she was recovering. I hadn't seen her. And so,
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Now,
Mr. Mayor, before we proceed, this is Kevin.
yes,
Farrell.
Kevin.
I just want to remind the council and members of the public that our deliberations tonight here are de novo. And although we should give some deference to the Planning Commission and their deliberations over this project, those deliberations are not binding on the outcome of our decision tonight. And I think it's important for us to recognize that and consider this appeal from that perspective. That's certainly the way I'm viewing it.
Thank you for that reminder. The property owner and applicant, please. Now, please tell us, remind us your name for the record and welcome.
Hello, good evening. James Malachowski here.
Hi.
My wife is hopefully on the Zoom. She wanted to be here with me tonight, but unfortunately she couldn't join me. Really wanted to be here. We are the property owners, and then I believe Dave Yakum, my architect, is also on the Zoom. First off, just thank you for the time. I'm sad we're here. This is sort of like my worst nightmare on this project is being here in front of the city council. I'd love to meet you under better circumstances. We are 6-year residences of Green Bay. My wife lived here her whole life, graduated Redwood High School. She's a PT locally, physical therapist. We have 3 kids, 6 years old at Basich, 4 years old at Ross Valley Nursery School, where my wife's on the board, and a 9-month-old, which is driving this project. I don't know about the Airbnb stuff, but I don't have any Airbnbs. I got a 30-year mortgage and a nice fixed rate that I'm going to stick with. And we're in it for the long haul. I want my kid to graduate from Redwood. So this is our house. We love living here. I take the bike path with my kids to school, so we're not going anywhere. But I think you heard most of the story. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I think it was a really amazing presentation. Anthony, I wish we could have had that conversation during the Planning Commission conversation back in July with all the professionals, and the process that quite frankly has been phenomenal. I feel like it's been a fair process. We're here tonight. But at the same time, I spent a lot of money on it. We're $4,000 in for that design review and a couple grand more of the architect to update the plans. And, we tried really hard to reach out. We reached out to everybody. Some people had differing levels of comfort with what they were willing to sign or look at. But everybody asked us to email the plans except for one house. And the first comment we got was around buying our house. And then the other one was about noise. And we didn't think much of it. And noise is something I understand. I have a soundproof area in my garage where I work because I literally work in the garage. That's my office right now, hence the need for a new office. I work from home too. I'm there 4 or 5 days a week working. I commute once a week maybe. So I'm around with the kids. And, this is a really important project. We've been thinking about it since 2017 when we first moved in. And one of the reasons we waited so long is because we saw so many projects going on. I told my wife, man, maybe we should wait a little bit and let it cool off a little bit, and hopefully we won't upset anybody. And we saw Michelle's letter to I believe somebody here in the city council on the 26th of July, believe it or not, I think was the date of our design review. And then they sent a link to the plans. And by the way, there's a meeting. And the concern then was the noise. And I get that. In fact, some of the conversations we have is about how can we accommodate you there. This is a project we're going to do a lot ourselves. My family, extended families in construction. It's a little slow the next 2 years. We got some folks that are going to come do it, and we can be flexible. But seeing how this has played out, where appeals were filed to the city before anybody talked to us in person, after we tried multiple times to talk in person, and didn't know about the son that lives in the city that wants to move back here someday. We felt a little bombarded and bullied, quite frankly. And I told my wife, you know what, the date was August 5th. They had to file the appeal by August 5th, and it's now Monday, August 8th, when they're reaching out to us. I'm like, I don't think they filed an appeal because I haven't heard from the city or the planning commission. And they said, before we file the appeal, love to talk to you about it. So we talked about it. And our general feeling after those conversations, wow, I'm negotiating with 3 different people, the mother, the son, the daughter, on 3 different issues, the balcony, the light and solar, the privacy and the noise, right? And I told my wife, you know what, we really can't, negotiate this way because I don't really know what I'm negotiating with here. And the right place to do this was the planning conversation and with the professionals in a mediated forum, not here. Anthony's pictures would have been great if they had the story polls, right? He saw them, he could have taken the pictures then. That's why we had them up for 2+ weeks and waited till the end of the appeal period to take them down, which also cost me another $2,000. So my total is about $10,000 now. My wife and I celebrated the approval. We couldn't wait to get started. We wanted to do this for a long time. Can't wait to get our kids in, a better situation. And, at the same time, we tried. We tried to do a lot of things here. And to be asked to go through design review, I just think is completely unreasonable. We kindly ask that you allow us to continue with the already compromised modified plans that we were happy to compromise on, that the Planning Commission approved. Thank you.
Are there council questions for the applicant? Councilmember Way.
So what I referenced earlier was the second packet, which has the architectural renderings in it and 2 photographs on the top. And they look like they are taken from the roof of your home, directly east or west, which is a concern. And I don't see a kitchen.
Yeah, so that view is taken basically standing on where the deck would be. I could easily from that view turn over and look at the kitchen, but the point of that view is Mount Tam, as you can see in the photos, right? And as you can also see in the photos, there's some massive trees in our yard, right, as well as their yard, that also provide lots of shade during the day. But that's the point of that view, right? I mean, we want to look at the mountain and watch the sunset, and whether it's from a deck or whether there's a window, to me, it's the same thing. The deck just actually, in my opinion, gives us all more privacy. And if you'll notice in some of the drawings, our house is actually moved back from the footprint, the drip line of the first floor. If you notice, Anthony's and family's house actually extends to the full length. So our plan is actually more modest from an intrusion perspective, but this might be a good opportunity to turn over to Dave. I don't know if you're on the line, if you have anything to share, Dave.
Yeah, I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so those photos were deliberately taken. One is southwest toward Tam, and that was the real incentive to have the addition so that they could appreciate that view. And then the other view is directly west, showing what is seen of the second floor addition of the neighbor's house, which is basically what I think is 3 frosted bathroom windows and then a small, probably bedroom window. I haven't been in the house, so I'm not sure, but it's second floor additions and decks in the neighborhood are ubiquitous. So that's the view toward Tam, and that's what they would see, Malachowskis would see from their deck. And if you look down at the house, you see the door that the glass door where the mom was on the couch behind that door. There's obviously no view into that. There's no view into the kitchen without doing some really contorted looks, I would suppose. And then the second view is directly west, looking at their second floor addition, which is again on their far western side of their property, and basically looking at frosted windows. So I mean, you can see that the view is the hillside, the sky, the Mount Tam, and that's what the incentive for the location of the addition and deck. And so, like the Planning Commission said, there really is no appreciable infringement on light, air, privacy views, solar access for this addition that again is ubiquitous in the neighborhood. And it's odd to us that this came about in such a strange way. We weren't notified until even after the appeal process was over. The Malachowskis made every effort to reach out to the neighbors, and they just weren't interested in looking at the drawings. So there was nothing really else that Lauren and James could do.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kandel has a question.
Yeah, quick question. Could you pop back to the picture right before this? And this is the picture that we said if you look down, you'd be looking at the kitchen through the door. You can see the bottom right of the screen. Is that right?
Correct.
And the view here, are you on the corner of the roof? I mean, could you move further to your right to get a view of that kitchen? I mean, I'm trying to picture, the deck. Would you be further to your right, having a different view, or do you understand my question?
Yes, I do. And moving to the west, which was essentially to the right, is basically going to give you the same view. Those windows and the door is going to be more down rather than out as it is. You'd have to move to the north to actually get a better view. But this because of the reduction in the deck that we did at the Planning Commission's insistence, the deck doesn't extend more than really a couple feet to the north from the location where this photo was taken. So there's never going to be a view, into those windows. I mean, well, you can see, you're looking at them now, and there's no indication at all what's behind the windows, what's behind the glass. So that's just the way glass works. It's very hard to see, even if you're looking directly into a window.
Thank you. I
you.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Other council member questions of the applicant, Vice Mayor Paulson?
Yeah, sorry, just on the same point. So where the solar panels are towards the tree, is the attempt was to move the massing south so as to get less of a line of sight into the neighbor's kitchen?
The deck was reduced both on the north end and the south end. So,
Okay.
well, actually on the west side too. So we shrunk it a foot on the west, moved it away from the neighbor, and then shrunk it on the north and south sides.
Okay, and would, any kind of shrubbery or vegetation be able to completely occlude the view?
It could to the back of their house. The door
Yes.
window there. Yeah, sure. That would be
Actually used to be
definitely
a
possible.
tree there when we first purchased the house. I think they had a tree in that area and they cut it down.
Okay, thank you.
But I would agree with that assessment.
All right, I'm going to conclude council member questions, and I would like to ask for public comment now. Are there members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments regarding this agenda item?
I'm looking for any raised hands from our audience members on Zoom or in person. There's no public comment.
I will close public comment. And we'll bring it back to the city council for consideration and discussion. Councilmember Hara, would you like to open the discussion?
Yes, I think this has been a very helpful conversation. I think it's unfortunate that we've gotten to the point where we're having to address these issues in the context of an appeal before the city council. It would have been helpful to have these issues addressed.
Kevin, could you speak up a little bit?
Can you not hear me?
You're a little soft.
Okay, let me try again. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. That's my mic. I just was saying that it's unfortunate that we've gotten to the point where these issues have to be addressed in the context of an appeal before the city council. I did go and visit the property earlier today and had an opportunity to just take a look and get a sense of the feel for where this project would be put up and the impact that it might have on the neighbor. And I frankly was concerned that the impact would be greater than I would be interested in seeing. That said, as I said, it's unfortunate that we're at the point where we have to address these issues in the context of an appeal to the city council. It would have been helpful if these issues had been resolved in the context of a conversation with the neighbors earlier on. But that hasn't happened. And I would be interested in a process going forward that would allow that opportunity to occur without moving forward with any specific determinations on approval or disapproval of the project at this point.
Are you asking to continue this?
That would be my preference, yes.
I see. Other council member discussion, Councilmember Way.
Well, while I echo the process that Councilmember Hoff said about it would have been more fortunate if the property owners had had an ability to engage with this. I think from what I feel, they The planning commission took into account some of their concerns about reducing the terrace balcony from the bedroom. The architect made those renderings and changed it. From the images I see here, it looks like the view from this area that is proposed to be will not have a significant impact on a view into the other property owners' homes. We also have a neighborhood where almost every other home has a similar structure on a second story. So it's a consistent theme throughout this neighborhood. And construction noise will happen. I feel that construction noise happens whenever people are doing additions, but to me, this is a reasonable addition of a home for a family that went through all the steps necessary to have the approvals and the design review process. Not everyone's happy with it, but I feel like this is does not have a significant or unreasonable impact on the adjoining property. And so I would uphold and approve this application.
You're leaning toward upholding the planning commission's
decision. Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
I agree with Councilmember Way. I think the appellant, I'm sorry, I think the applicant has done everything correctly. I have looked at the plans, the drawings, the pictures. It doesn't seem to be out of line with the neighborhood. It doesn't seem to be out of line with the reasonable standard that we use. I would also agree with the planning commission's decision.
Vice Mayor Paulson.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been trying to track, as I said earlier, the three issues. There's from, lowest to highest priority from Mr. Giraldi, I think, was the noise, the solar and light, and then the privacy. And I agree, the noise, I would hope that the Malachowskis could be accommodating. It sounds like they would be. On the solar and the light. Again, I'm just confused. I don't see like we're putting up a high rise and you get no light. I mean, we all know that if you just put one story up, you're going to lose an hour in the morning. And with the privacy, I'm wondering if there could be some compromise. I mean, I don't know that that's on the table now to put some vegetation in there because it's a curable issue. It's not like this is a permanent, if it's really that bad, a shrub or tree could be planted and I don't know what cost, but because it's curable, I think that, leaves some room. And I do think the process was very important. It's unfortunate that there were delays. They're all very understandable with COVID and elderly parents, but I think the time to resolve a lot of that was maybe 2 months ago. So I'm leaning towards approving and upholding what the Planning Commission recommended.
Would someone like to make a motion? Councilmember Way.
Just wondered if, you did close the hearing. I just saw it.
I closed the public hearing.
Sorry. Yes. Oh, now I've switched here. I would like to move approval of the Planning Commission's decision to approve application DR/FAR 2212 for 355 Bertano Way.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion.
Did I say that correctly?
And to deny the appeal.
And to deny the appeal.
We have a motion.
Seconder accepted.
And
Yes.
Clarification.
And Councilmember Kendall is the second.
Councilmember Kendall,
Yes.
Councilmember Hara,
No.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Paulson,
Yes.
Mayor Homer.
Yes. The appeal is denied and the Planning Commission decision is upheld. The vote is 4-1. Do we need to record the vote? That concludes that item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. City Manager.
As much as I'm very much looking forward to Mr. Skinner's presentation for 8.1, I suspect the vast majority of the audience is here for 8.2, and staff has no reason that the items couldn't be reordered if that's the inclination of the mayor.
Do I have consensus?
Yeah.
We will move to the business items now. And we will follow the city manager's advice, and there's consensus of the council to take item 8.2, which is a report from the Rent Stabilization Ad Hoc Committee. Councilmember Haroff and Vice Mayor Paulson. May we have a staff report, please?
I'm going to turn it over to the members of the ad hoc committee.
Councilmember Harris, do you want me to go or would you like to go?
No, Gabe, you should take the lead on this.
Okay, thank you. So I, as our last council meeting was in August, and we had an early one There were 35 speakers from Skylark and Sense of Urgency and a lot, that we processed. So we formed the committee with a commitment to report out frequently. And that's what we're doing tonight. So we don't have any decisions or any options, but we did want to at least largely for the benefit of the public, but also for fellow council members, because, we think this is an issue that we should decide sooner rather than later. We wanted to at least give you an early lead on what we've done. So the actions to date are fairly straightforward. We've met with representatives from the new ownership, Prime, and they, have explained some of the facts and made some suggestions, and we hope to do a follow-up meeting with them. We're scheduling that now. Subsequently, we met with 4 members from the Skylark Tenant Association, and 3 actually lived there. One was a guest member from San Anselmo who they invited, and we heard from their perspectives and some of their requirements. What is really material now is the coming actions. So we're looking to the city manager to, get meetings lined up as quickly as possible. And we haven't really heard from many of the owners or tenants outside of Skylark, which is one of our priorities. So we're doing an outreach and trying to get those people and those stakeholders to come. We also believe in the entire housing portion of this, supply and demand and rents and availability and affordability, that we need some outside opinions, and those are rather hard to come by right now. So I personally have done a lot of research myself, and I know the city manager has, but we're hoping to get those meetings, some input as soon as possible. We're getting some legal counsel in the next day or two as well. And what I would really like to see, and now I'm going a little bit off the committee and just my own feelings, is I'd like to, see if we can get the group at Prime to talk to the Skylark tenants and see if there's something that can be negotiated or worked through with them. And really for the council, we, at our next meeting, I'd like to see if the city manager and Councilmember Haroff are willing to look at some of the possible options that are coming to the table, so you can have some time to think about what the decision might be in the future. But right now, we're really gathering information, and we really appreciate the patience of everybody, especially the tenants. We know this is a issue. It's on my mind a lot, and we're moving as quickly as we can. So with that, Councilmember Haroff, if you have anything to add, or City Manager.
Vice Mayor, thank you for that summary. I think it's pretty accurate. I do want to just emphasize 2 things. Actually, a couple of things. First of all, I've gone out on record on my own personal view that this is an important issue that we need to address in an expeditious manner. I think we're doing the best we can, because I think that any decision that we take on this matter needs to be fully informed by some of the research that our city manager is undertaking and that we're undertaking as a body, and I think that's appropriate. But I do think time is somewhat of the essence, because the concerns that we've heard from some of the tenant groups reflect that concern, and I want to be responsive to that. So I'm happy with the process that we're undertaking. I think it needs to be well considered. I think we're doing our best to do that. But I don't think it really is going to require that much more time. Let's get the information together that we need to get, and then let's make a decision. I also want to make sure that there's a distinction that's made between the consideration of rent stabilization, which has been the focus of this discussion for the most part, and the just cause eviction issue, which is part and parcel of the overall discussion. I think that's a separate discussion. And I don't know that I have a well-considered view on the outcome of how that discussion should go. So I want to keep those things a little bit separate without putting them to the side, because it's important. But the focus for me is to make sure that we are developing an appropriate strategy that is consistent with the needs of our rental community in the city of Larkspur, which is quite large and not just limited to Skylark. And to do so in an expeditious and progressive way. I think we're on that path, and I want to encourage us to continue to be aggressive on that basis. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrop. Are there council members who have questions for the ad hoc committee? Councilmember Way.
Sure. I guess it's several fold. First, with how these ad hoc committees work, is there a way to for us to submit questions, as I know I can submit them through you, through the city manager to have asked, but will there be not just a verbal report out sort of, but an opportunity to see some content before the next meeting? Is that what our intent is, or?
In addition to the staff report?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a staff report tonight.
No.
Because it's early in this process, which is why I'm wondering.
My advice to the council would be that individual council members make requests to me for information. I'll publish that information to all 5 council members in the public.
Okay.
That's really the only way, I think, to remain consistent with the Brown Act while allowing the ad hoc committee to function.
Okay, I just want to make sure people are aware that's how those ad hoc committees function.
Well, I mean, ad hoc committees function as the members of the ad hoc committee choose for them to function. You are requesting that, and I'm happy to publish information as it comes along. You know, I can't promise that I can answer every question
Yeah.
you're going to have. There's inadequacies in the county's databases that we're trying to reconcile so we can be sure exactly how many parcels we're talking and properties we're actually talking about being affected. I think it's on the magnitude of 65 potential complexes that we're dealing with. And I share that with folks because I've cautioned that this is not just about Skylark.
Yeah.
It's not something we can do overnight if we are going to do our due diligence of informing every property that's affected by what you are potentially going to have before you.
That was one of my questions, was where do we find an inventory of property owners? And
So the only challenge I have left is that there isn't a clear database of when everything was constructed. So I think we're going to actually have to pull out our files property by property, because the act, you can't impose rent stabilization regulations on properties that were built after 95. In Larkspur, that's not a lot of properties, but I still need to go through and
Yeah.
figure all that out.
so just for people to be clear about that, the current California law is properties that are built after 1995 cannot be regulated. Is that what I understand? By,
That's the Costa Hawkins Act, yes.
Other council member questions of the ad hoc? Councilmember Kendall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question is, there are rumors, and I would like to confirm or deny that the prime owners have some type of policy at this point where they are negotiating leases. They are reducing rents in situations where people have shown financial hardship. Is this accurate? And is there a policy or is there anything moving in this direction where they are voluntarily addressing this issue at this point?
I think we're well within bounds. I believe the folks from Prime are present in the audience. It might be better to ask them than to have
Okay.
the ad hoc committee speak on that.
Is there someone from Prime who can address that?
Please tell us who you are.
Will Madison with Prime. Yeah, so happy to answer questions back and forth if that's the best format. We heard the urgency from the August 3rd meeting, and Councilmember Candel, you in particular, I think undertook some initiative to say this needs to happen very quickly. And so what we did within that week is create the Skylark Housing Fund. So that provides rent discounts of up to 15%. It is means tested. So if you make $65,000 or less as a single person, you qualify. If you're a family of four, you can make up to $95,000 and qualify. And we have 7 applicants who have already received discounts. So that's an average of $335 per month that those applicants are receiving. And, we have no evictions in progress at this time. So that's another question that has come up frequently. There's nothing in progress. And to the point about renewals at less than the maximum allowed by law, there are dozens at this point of renewals that have been sent out below the maximum. So those are 3 points that have come up frequently, and happy to answer other questions.
Through the mayor. Thank you. First follow-up question is, this policy that you have, how has this been published to the members of the community so they know it's available and that they can apply for it?
So we've sent it out via email. We've posted paper on every single door. We reached out directly to any speaker from the August 3rd meeting who we could identify. We also saw public comment tonight in the written agenda. We saw 3 people who seem to have personal circumstances that might cause them to qualify. So we actually have reached out in the last couple of hours to those people.
All right. And the second question I had was the numbers that you came up with, the 65,000 as a single, 90 for a family of 4. How did you come up with those numbers?
So we took the HUD 50% income from Marin County. And that's where we started. That's a good number, we think, because that's the point at which for our, the in-place rents at Skylark are very low. And so at 50% of income, that's the threshold where people are, if you're under that, paying more than 40% in rent, utilities, and parking. If you're over that, you're paying less than 40% on average.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very helpful information.
Yep.
All right, other council member questions of the ad hoc committee? If not, we'll open it's a business item and we will have public comment. Are there members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comment regarding this item? Hi, Kevin Carroll.
Yeah. I don't even have to introduce myself anymore. God, that's great.
Now we see your face.
Couple of weeks ago, a resident of Skylark Apartments asked her boss for a good ride to the airport, and not knowing I was involved in any of these issues, they called me and asked me to pick them up, and I picked them up. It was a 80-year-old woman and her daughter, and they were leaving after 44 years in Martinsburg. And we talked all the way to the airport about how she raised her daughter as a single mom. Daughter went to the school. She participated in PTA. She worked primarily retail jobs, sometimes 2 or 3, to be able to afford it, and she just couldn't anymore. And they were leaving, going to Tucson, Arizona. And one of the hard parts about it is the cat cried the whole way to the airport. It's sort of the little twist of the knife. The question I have tonight to the city manager, you mentioned that you're going to be contacting the landlords, and I'm just wondering, will the tenants also be contacted that would be affected by this ordinance?
Just to be clear, I haven't yet contacted anybody. I'm still trying to get a handle on how many properties there are, but of course we will be doing forums for everyone in our community. And
thank you.
I will tell you, I do think this part of the database is accurate. There's probably on the magnitude of 3,300 units involved. So we're talking about a lot of residents.
Thank you. And thank you for the question, Kevin. Are there other members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments regarding this agenda item? Yes, sir. Thank you for your patience. I know I said an hour.
The rent control should go beyond just the people who are in a jam. I think it should go for everyone in general who is renting. And I do appreciate you occasionally bringing up that you're going to bring it beyond Skylark or whatever it's called, apartments. I've been in Marin 60 years. I should have bought a home. I lived in Marin RV Mobile Home Park. I got spoiled there. The rent's cheap. It's not cheap anymore. And I'd like to stay. And as far as leases go, leases can be kind of fickle. They could be set up at pretty high rates. And that's all I have to say. I didn't have a notebook or anything to write anything intelligent down.
Thank you for your comments. Are there other members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments regarding this agenda item? Allison, are there members of the public that are in the queue online?
Yes, our first comment will come from Tristan.
Hi, Tristan.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, so I am Tristan. I'm one of the founding members of the Skylark Tenants Association. I want to thank you first and foremost for taking this process seriously and listening to the concerns of your residents and constituents. You know, a lot of us have been here for a very long time and are really actually used to the type of rent increases that we are asking the city enforce through a rent control law. Most of us saw in the area of 2 to 3% rent raises in the many years we've been here. I would also like to stress the importance, and I have spoken to Councilmember Haroff about this personally before, but the just cause evictions protection is a necessary part of the overall thing, simply because it closes loopholes that otherwise could be used by landlords to exploit tenants and get them out of leases early and otherwise kind of violate the spirit of the law. So. And I would also like to then also answer Council Member Candel's questions about the relief programs. The cutoff, the income cutoff for the Skylark Housing Fund is actually lower than the Section 8 cutoff. So I'm not quite sure how that's supposed to be a great thing for us. Additionally, if you're already receiving assistance from another agency, you are disqualified. So presumably those people on Section 8 housing who do need help are not able to qualify for this. And the leases that they were very proud of, where they said that they did not charge the max, those were often lowered from 10% to maybe 9.8%. We've spoken to residents who have gotten these and they save anywhere from $20 to $80 a year. So that's not really helpful, and it's saving face more than it's providing safe and secure housing for their tenants. And they still have not met with the Skylark Tenants Association, and I appreciate Vice Mayor Paulson for calling that out as well.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Way has a question for you.
Are you still on?
I am, yes, thank you.
You mentioned that you are representative of the Skylark Tenants Association. Is there a collaboration with other tenants associations that you're aware of? In which
Not so much associations. We have been working with the Marin Rent Control campaign and door knocking other complexes in Larkspur, and we plan on running tabling sessions as well as part of a larger campaign. But as far as we know, there are not any other tenants associations in Larkspur, but we would be happy to talk to anyone who wants some help forming one.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, please tell us who you are
Yeah, my name.
and where you live.
Sure. My name is, can you hear me okay? My name is Jockey, and I'm one of the founding members as well of the Skylark Tenant Association. Can you guys hear me okay through the mask? Okay. I just wanted to address a couple of things, and Councilmember Kandel, I'll also just come back to your question if that's okay. And I will be speaking just on behalf of the association, so it will be quick. I promise it won't be long. I have, first of all, thank you to all of you council members for really just giving us this opportunity to meet with you and hearing the plea that we brought to you. We realized we brought this earlier on in the year and we've been coming, so thank you for that. I have called Larkspur my residence since 2008. In 2009, I discovered a hidden gem, a community tucked on a hill, barely visible to the street, quite charming actually, self-sufficient, and it immediately felt safe and it felt like home to me. And much to my shock and awe, it was actually incredibly affordable. And this community is the Skylark Apartments, and it's a place that I've called home for the last 13 years. It's a place where my friends are, my person that I borrow sugar from, the person that checks my mail when I'm out of town, the person that I run out to the street and pick up their takeaway if they're caught in traffic. So it's really an integral part of my day-to-day living. Unfortunately, my home is currently under threat, and I know you guys have heard that. And it's because of the recent acquisition that the investment banker called Prime Group, they are systematically pushing me and many of my neighbors out. And we've talked about that quite a lot. And in spite of what they're saying, let it just be clear that majority of the people that have received the rent increases have received either 8.8% to 10. It was 8.8% for 2022. In 2023, it's 10%. Now, the size of Skylark, there's 455 units. And the gentleman today said there's only 7 people that have received assistance. Right now, our record shows that there's probably about maybe 400 or so occupied units. So imagine out of those, only 7 people have been able to qualify for the assistance. So as Tristan said, the assistance that they kind of put in place since our last meeting is really not helping majority of us. So I think the only way that this problem can be solved, not just for Skylark, but the greater Larkspur, is a citywide rent stabilization ordinance. And it's really the only way that we can curb corporate greed like Prime's, Prime groups. Prime is like they're showing here. So I just want to thank the ad hoc committee, Councilmember Haroff, I know you're online, thank you, and Vice Mayor Paulson for taking this deliberate step to lead the county in addressing this incredible urgent issue of rent stabilization for over 6,000 renters that call Larkspur their home and are contributing citizens to its vitality and culture. It has been encouraging for my neighbors and I to meet with the ad hoc committee and to learn about both Councilmember Haroff's and Vice Mayor Paulson's passion and commitment to ensuring that permanent renter protections are established in Larkspur and established urgently. And I just wanted to clarify a little bit that when we say rent control or rent stabilization, what exactly do we mean? What we're saying is that we need a rent control model. We need rent control that is modeled after numerous cities and towns across California who have successfully stabilized rents. What does this mean? This means creating a rent board and administering a petition process for both individual rent adjustments to make the ordinance fair for both tenants and landlords while protecting the city from any liability that they could have. And I'd also like to point out, I don't remember who exactly said this, I think it may have been Councilmember Haroff, that there's a lot of legal stuff that comes in with sort of administering this process. And we just want to point out that Legal Aid of Marin has offered their services for free for the next 18 months. And this was in the letter that they outlined on 8/3/2022. They're doing the same in a few other cities in Marin County. And essentially, this is how virtually all jurisdictions with rent stabilizations across the state work. And there are numerous models of how to administer such programs, including a nearby Fairfax, which it appears they're actually having a meeting tonight, and it appears to be on the verge of becoming the first municipality in Marin to establish rent stabilization. Rent control and rent stabilization, whichever one you pick however one you pick to address it, it would actually provide real housing security and stability for Larkspur renters and would keep me, my friends, a lot of who are here, my neighbors in our homes and in our beloved Skylark community. And I just would like to urge the city council, as you're doing your research, as you're talking to different people, that to move deliberately towards passing a rent control ordinance that would it has to be both stabilize rent and establish just cause evictions for protections in Larkspur, because the two of them are married. One without the other is not as strong, and we need robust protections as renters. And Councilmember Candel, I think you had a question about just the conversation that we're having with Prime, whether they've, how they reach out to us. And I don't know if I answered that, but I just wanted to.
No, I'm going to make a point of order. We've allowed you to speak longer than normal for an individual speaker. I did that because you've identified yourself as speaking on behalf of a group.
Thank you.
So I would ask those members of that group to not take time for the meeting repeating what you're saying, given that you're saying that you're speaking for the group. So I just would like to make that point. Continue.
Thank you. And I'm sure individual stories are different from what I'm representing, but yeah, thank you so much, Mayor Hilmer. I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask
Do
a question?
you have a second question?
Sure, absolutely.
My question is, it was represented that people in the community have been notified about the rent stabilization that they're voluntarily doing. it sounds like what you're saying is you're agreeing that everybody knows about it. They just don't qualify based on the, you know, the requirements, that it's not a problem of people don't know. Or the reason there's only 7 people that are doing it right now is not that, oh, nobody knows about it. It's that everybody knows about it, but only 7 people qualified. Is that your understanding?
Correct. So there was an email that was sent out. And of course, one of the things that we say is that with communication equity is that there needs to be the email, but not everybody is on email. There's an email that's sent out, but also there needs to be other ways to actually make sure the community knows. So we did receive an email from them, yes. And you're right, not a lot of people qualify for it. And yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that.
No worries.
Thank you very much. Does that conclude your comments?
It does. May I add one more comment just to kind of address something that one of the gentlemen from Prime said earlier.
Sure.
And he mentioned that there is not currently any evictions happening, and there is, we can say from our members, there is some evictions that are currently in place at the County Court of Marin. So, and these are evictions that have been carried on, and they've been for protected months in this protected months under the eviction moratorium that the city council passed. So there is active evictions right now.
Thank you for your comments.
Absolutely.
Are there other members of the public that would like to make comments or ask questions regarding this agenda item? Allison, are there others online in the queue?
Our next comment will come from Evan.
Welcome, Evan.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is Evan Lingenfelder. I'm the manager at Left Bank Larkspur. I spoke last month. Thanks again. I just wanted to bring up, so since I did speak last month at the meeting, Miss Liza Castro sequentially emailed me thanking me for my comments, and just during her email, she simply mentioned that she was dismayed to hear of so many Skylark residents struggling financially. That is very nice for them to say. Very nice. However, as you have heard, the many residents of Skylark do not meet these requirements of this rent assistance program. And also, I just wanted to address it properly. It is a rental assistance program, whereas they are not lowering the rents that they propose on these new leases. They're keeping the lease, say, at $3,000, and they are providing assistance to pay that full rent. So that full rent can still be the market value. However, they may not be receiving the full rent. That is what they are charging, if that makes sense. It's assistance, it's not a rent stabilization or a decrease in the proposed rent of these leases that they've proposed to their tenants. I am unfortunately part of that population that did receive the full 10%. So I can also say that, yes, they are going to the max. That's just the truth. You know, they may try and say yes for 5 houses out of the 455. Yes, we gave them an 8.8% increase, or maybe 15. They got a 8.8% increase. But I'm of the population where it's 10%. I responded to Ms. Liza's email asking for a lower rent. Just saying, like, I heard that there was someone that was offered a 7.2% increase. For example, 5% increase would be much more manageable, while saving $1,500 over the course of a year is significant for my fiance and myself. For Prime Group, such a largely funded company, $1,500 would be a penny to them. However, for individuals, it does hit wallets individually harder. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at our emails correspondence that we had. We simply just asked, could you request or extend an offer as a gesture as your stated commitment to fair business practices and your concern with your residents, mentioning that they were dismayed to hear that many people were struggling financially with these rent increases. She responded, and they are keeping the full 10% rent increase for my unit.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Allison, who's next in the queue? And then I'll take the young lady in the back.
Next, we'll hear from Nick.
Yes, hello. Hello, council members.
It's nice to be with you today. My name is Nicholas. I live in Greenbrae, and I don't have a lot to say, but I believe that if such a rent control should come forward, I don't think it should be limited to just Skylark. I think it should be all of the apartments in Marin. And I know that that is a very ambitious thing to say, but I believe it to be true. It is not just Skylark that is dramatically increasing in rent. Both my parents are blue collar workers. They find it incredibly hard to keep up with the rent. It keeps increasing, it doesn't decrease every year. And although we are on the lower side, our rent increase only went up 2%. It is still becoming alarmingly difficult to pay. And given that Skylark has had this problem with prime, and it's very likely that this could extend to other apartments in the near future as well. And I just wanted to say that if such a rent control should be implemented, it should not be limited to just one section of apartments. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself for the record.
Can you hear me? through the
Yes.
mic? Okay, my name is Julie and I live up at Skylark as well. I am one of the people who have received a 10% increase. And Prime generously offered to lower that to keep me in the community just to make sure I could afford it. So it could be 9.92%, which would save me $24 a year. And a lot of my neighbors are receiving things like that. I believe that rent control, I'm really glad that you are considering this and you have the ad hoc community. It can't happen fast enough. People are leaving every day. And whereas Prime says the rents are low, the rents are not low. They are just less than what the absurd amount of rent that people pay in Marin. And yeah, I just really hope that you guys consider this quickly. I will be leaving Marin. I'm a Bay Area resident, born and raised here most of my life. And I just can't afford to live here anymore. And yeah, my rent's going up $243 a month next month. And the next year it'll go up $280 if there's no sort of rent control and they can go to the max. And it's all just about, you know, a corporation making money, and people are not considering that these are people's homes. These are people's lives. And so thank you all for considering rent control, and whatever we can do as tenants to help get information, we are happy to be your people on the ground working, because it's our homes that are at risk. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Allison, who's next in the queue?
Next, we'll hear from Leslie W.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, I just wanted to also echo that I was so encouraged to hear last month that you guys heard our pleas and were willing to set up this ad hoc committee. I realize that you have to balance a renter's concerns with those of the property owners, and I feel that we've been heard. I feel there is some compassion. My question is, I want to know, you said you met with the Prime people, and I want to know, is there any sort of plan in place for them to actually directly speak with us residents who want to engage with them, and not via taped notes on doors? We want to actually be able to have some sort of a sit down with Prime as the residents of the place that they call a community, that we know is a community. We're very much interested in meeting with them. And I wonder, did you have any sort of dialogue with them regarding if this is going to be a possibility? Because we would very much like to speak with them.
Given this is public comment, I'm going to ask the representative of Prime who's in the audience tonight if he'd like to answer your question.
Thank you.
Yes, in our discussion with the ad hoc committee, we mutually agreed that a meeting between Prime and residents with the ad hoc committee present would be a key part of the process. So we have made ourselves available, and I think that's in the process of being scheduled.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Not exactly, because it doesn't really give me any sort of inclination as to when or with whom we would be meeting and how this would go about, but we would like it to be sooner than later.
Well, we'll take that as your direction. The gentleman said they're working on scheduling the meeting. I think he identified that representatives of Prime and the tenants and the ad hoc committee would be present. So are there other
That's-
questions we can answer for you?
That's correct. I believe we are happy to take more initiative, but I believe that the city manager is working with a lot of different parties to try and make it happen. So, you know,
The city will offer the agreed upon date when
Yeah.
it happens.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Allison, who's next in the queue?
Next, we'll hear from Duncan McCandless.
Welcome.
Well, thank you once again. This is very brief. I'm so curious to know where the funds come for this, the 7 people that have so far qualified.
Well, maybe we can have that information for you when we meet.
Well, except I find it interesting because if it's provided by Prime, why do it seems so Byzantine? Why don't they just negotiate a lower rent that reflects the same thing that they're paying out to people? There must be some strategy.
I appreciate your comment. Would staff like to say something in offering of information?
No, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure we stay within the bounds of the agenda item.
Okay, we're going to stay within the bounds of the agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Allison, who's next in the queue?
Next, we'll hear from Scott Jones.
Yes, hi. I've lived at Skylark now we've lived at Skylark since 2005. And I just wanted to address what the Prime representative was saying about the rents being below market rate. Currently, I'm not going to get into specific numbers of what I'm paying, but I am paying over 40% of my monthly income just for rent. And this is following their 10% rent increase. I'm fortunate enough that I have a job that pays fairly decently, but if this continues, and I'm not exceptional, I don't think I'm an exceptional person here at all as far as income. People are just average people, working people who live and spend money in Larkspur and Marin are just going to be priced out because of these kind of rent increases. 10%, I certainly don't get a 10% raise every year. I don't know anybody around me who does. If they do, great, I'm happy for them, but that's just not realistic. We also know of 2 of our neighbors who have tried to renegotiate their lease with Prime and have been turned down for that no negotiation is available. So I just wanted to add that as perspective.
Thank you for your comments. Allison, who's next in the queue?
I'm looking for any additional raised hands.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Joan Weinberg, and that's from Skylark.
Hi.
Hi, and I thank all of you for your desire to really help us and pushing forward. I figured out that I've been living in Skylark for 30 years starting this month. And if the Pels had increased my rent 10% every year, it would have taken 9 years to get to the rent that I'm paying now in 29 years. So they did not desire to gouge out our eyes or get people in to the apartments at $3,500 for 1 bedroom, $4,000 for 2 bedroom. It was, what they did was reasonable. I'm one of the people who has applied, but I just did it yesterday or day before, so I don't know the response yet. So we'll see. But again, what somebody else had said is we need the rent to not go up so precipitously every year. That's the point. Not that we get a couple of $100 per month off the rent. We feel like we're taking something that, we don't really deserve. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other members of the public? Yes, ma'am. Are there other folks in the chamber tonight that would like to make comments? You can raise your hand. Okay. Allison, are there other members of the public in the queue?
We have one member who hasn't spoken yet and one who has already had a chance to speak.
All right.
Raising hands at the moment.
Thank you. Please continue.
Hi, I'll be fast. I know we are on a time limit here. My name is Robin Jordan. Moved to Skylark in 2009 when I was pregnant with my daughter. My whole life raising my daughter has been there. I've had times where it was challenging and I had to have roommates. And as a single mom, I worked very, very hard to get to a place where I no longer have to have roommates. That just happened in January of this year. Prime took over in February. I'm faced with a 10% increase, which I feel like I can absorb right now, but I can't. As I said last time, I can't absorb another one. I do appreciate that 7 people out of 455 units are getting some kind of assistance because they certainly do need it, and I can respect that. Will also mention that they were offering lower than a 10% increase to a dozen people is what he said this evening. So 19 units out of 455 are actually getting attention while the greater population of Skylark is not getting any kind of negotiating power. And I just feel like, when I moved to Larkspur, this was a community. It was a hometown. Everything about this is a hometown. And I think that's one of the things that we all love, appreciate, and advocate for here. And this particular situation with Skylark, while it's not isolated, it is a perfect example of big corporate investment groups coming in and changing what we truly love about this city. And I would hate to see that be thrown to the side for an investor's profits, because that's who they report to, is their investors. That's why they're doing the maximum increase, because they have somebody they have to answer to. They're doing their job. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Allison, would you please let in the last speaker from the.
Will we now hear from Linda Swanson?
Did you change your mind, ma'am, about making a comment? Sure. Allison, is somebody going to speak after the online?
Yes, I'm asking Linda to unmute, and so they'll need to unmute on their end to be able to speak to the council. So there we go.
I don't know if you're talking to me or not.
Yes, we are, and we can hear you.
I have nothing prepared to say. I do support the tenants group. I have a son and daughter-in-law who live at Skylark. I'm a homeowner in Larkspur, but I'm not a landlord. And I think there are probably many homeowners who appreciate having rental units available for their kids and friends. And I appreciate the complexities of the issue. I have some experience practicing law in the area of rent control, and I know how complicated it is, but good luck to you and thanks for trying. How do I unmute this thing?
I will mute you on our end.
Thank you for your comments. Please.
My name is Elif. I'm from Prime. I'll be very brief as Will has spoken and responded to a lot of points, but I did want to be clear as in-house counsel for the company that we do not have eviction cases in court right now. So I just wanted to
Thank you.
clarify that.
Sorry, can I ask- Lisa, can I ask a question? Can you know, maybe for the benefit of all of us, can you describe, like, if someone serves an unlawful detainer, is that considered an eviction case?
So if, to be clear about the terminology, typically you're served a pay or quit notice. And then if you do not comply with the notice, then your case is, we obviously consult with outside counsel. They will draft a complaint and they will file that with the court. And so there's a big difference between having an eviction case and being served a notice.
So there could be pay or quit notices out there.
Yes.
Okay, but an unlawful detainer, in my understanding, is the first engagement with the court system to have at the end of the process, possibly a sheriff come and take you out of your unit.
Right. Once you receive a judgment in an unlawful detainer case.
Right.
Then you would proceed with the sheriff's office.
So to paraphrase, there are no unlawful detainers, but there may be pay or quit notices.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes. You'll be the last speaker. I'm sure you'll be brief.
Very brief, thank you. Vice Mayor Paulson, I just want to clarify. There are unlawful detainers that are currently in place. And just to clarify, there is a 3-day notice that is given. A lot of those were issued after the 8-3 meeting. And there was a few unlawful detainers that were issued after the 8-3 meeting. An unlawful detainer, just to be clear, is them saying that we are proceeding with the eviction process. They have to file it with the court. So this is, you know, semantics here. Yes, they are proceeding with that. And what usually happens is it goes into they file, and then the tenant has a chance to answer, and then there's you know, a mediation process that comes after, and so forth. So it's incorrect what they're representing. There are cases that I know this because I can speak to it from the association in general. And I just wanted to, one last thing to the, and I think Councilmember Candel, you asked about this, about how the information got out to us, and I believe Will addressed this. They have done some intimidation tactics with us where they're individually reaching out to people. And a few of my association members have done that. They're individually reaching out to people, and we found it very intimidating, honestly. And a lot of people have written the association and said, we just feel like we're intimidated. Should we talk to them? Should we speak in whole as an association? So I just wanted to point it out there that the goodwill that they come up to this podium and speak about is not what we see when we go back home. It is not. Thank you.
All right, we're going to close public comment. And we'll bring it back to the city council for any further discussion. Would the ad hoc committee members like to begin any closing discussion?
Sure, I'll go. So I first want to thank everybody, the tenants and the people who've called in, and also for Prime. This is really a head and a heart process. I mean, these are human lives we're talking about. And we're also talking about policy. And one thing I think maybe my fellow council members are feeling is there are conflicting reports being given about what's happening. From the first meeting with Prime, invited for the two sides to meet. And I see this as a part of a broader context. I mean, there's Skylark and as I don't have all the names, but I'm looking at you right now. As your story tells, there's a time of the essence, urgency here. And I think Councilmember Haroff and I and the whole council respect that. And we want to address those issues and not, get paralyzed in analysis. On the other hand, we have, as the city manager said, literally hundreds of owners. And I, met a small apartment owner that said they're barely making ends meet. So this could affect them as well. So I think we need to balance the needs of the community. But in brief, we will report out next meeting. I think I'm going to speak to the city manager again, as soon as, I can, and we're going to speak with legal counsel about, how we can take the information we've gotten tonight and really start moving towards something that the council can see into, council member Way's question, could we have some content? I really would love that. I think that there is a bit of misinformation. There's also a lot of emotion. And I think we need to really look at what our options are and what's going to serve the community, and the degree to which the ad hoc committee can put that together and try to bring that, hopefully next council meeting, I think we'll all be served. So that'll be my intention. Thank you.
Councilmember Haroff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I just want to clarify for folks listening in. My focus is really on the larger multifamily residential properties within our jurisdiction. Skylark is one of them, but as we have heard from some of the speakers tonight, it's not the only one. And it will be important for us to develop a strategy on this issue that is not focused on a particular property, but is focused in general on broad application to that category of rental units within our community. I completely understand that there are distinctions to be made within the rental community overall, especially with, folks who have single family homes that are renting out aspects of their homes for rental purposes. That's fine. That's not what I'm focused on. I don't think that's what we are as a council focused on. But I don't want to make this all be all about Skylark. This is a general, what we're trying to do is to develop policy and a practice and an ordinance, hopefully, that will have general application to a category of properties that I think are particularly subject to the stresses that we have been discussing in the course of this conversation. That's my goal, and I hope we keep that focus as we go forward. And I want to emphasize, as I already did at the outset, my own sense of urgency in moving forward with this. I understand we have to gather data. We have to do that. And I think our city manager is doing a great job in pursuing that process. But I think that the expression has been used at least several times during the course of the conversation tonight. Time is of the essence, and we need to get this done. So that's about all I have to say. I appreciate Vice Mayor Paulson's engagement in this issue. I appreciate the involvement of the rest of the city council and our staff, but it's time to move forward.
Councilmember Kendall.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the city attorney to cut me off if I say anything inappropriate. I'm going to try to be honest. Rent control was not on our radar until Prime came in. And we as a city council represent the community. I think the community has been offended by the way this has been handled. I was pleased when I heard that there were some voluntary steps being taken. I was disappointed to learn what those voluntary steps actually were and the amount of people that were affected by it. I am hopeful that by the time we have another city council meeting, more significant steps will have been taken to address this problem. Thank you.
Councilmember Way. Would you like to add to the discussion before we close the item?
I just appreciate, I want to acknowledge all the comments that came in and that are on our packet are available, and I've read them. We did get a very long comment from a Mr. Edler that I responded to him to thank him for that. Haven't read all of it yet, but I'd encourage others who are interested in sort of a background history. You can see what he's compiled, which is on the city's agenda packet. I do have a list of questions that as I need to learn more about this, as we all seem to be struggling to figure out all its ramifications, of opportunity now to communicate it to the city manager, who can bring it to the ad hoc committee. Because there's a lot that's been brought up tonight that I'd like some clarification on. So hopefully we can add that.
Thank you. Before we close the item, I just want to say I'm very grateful for all the efforts of all the parties. I think Councilmember Kendall did a pretty good summary of my feelings on this. And I think this is going to escalate very quickly into a countywide issue. I don't think this is going to be seen as just something that's happening in Larkspur, or now if we can observe it. So I think it's quickly going to escalate, and that is where the implementation has to take place. Larkspur does not have the resources to run a rent control board and what you might see in San Francisco or Berkeley. So it's a countywide issue. So are there other council member comments on this item tonight? All right, with that, we'll close that business item. Thank you very much for your attendance and your participation this evening. We'll keep everybody
Mr.
posted
Mayor.
on the process of the ad hoc committee. We'll take a 2-minute recess. We're back to a packed council chamber for Mr. Skinner's presentation. We're going to go back to item 8.1, which is award a construction contract for the Bon Air Road Bridge Mitigations Project.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public. Julian Skinner, Public Works Director. The item we have for you tonight is to consider awarding a construction contract for the Bon Air Bridge Mitigations project. And I have to say, we did just finish a $30 million bridge replacement program, and we did just pave 20 miles of city streets over the last few years. But this project has had a lot of work behind the scenes, and there's a lot that's gone in over the last 5 or 6 years to getting this to the point where we are today, where hopefully we can award a contract and have shovels in the ground within about a month or so. So again, just to reiterate, the action item before you tonight is to award a construction contract to McGuire and Hester. They were the low bidder. Unfortunately, they were the only bidder, but they were their bid was responsive, and they were a responsible bidder. The amount of their bid is about 3.18 million. The budget had 3.3 million available for this project based on earlier estimates. Although our most recent engineer's estimate was closer to 2.5 million, but we went through a bid analysis and found that the low bid was a justified price. And we had to go through a similar exercise with Caltrans too, because of the federal funding, and they concurred with us that this was the best, most economical way to move forward with this project. And then just a reminder, this is part of the bridge program. So 88.54% of all the dollars that get spent on construction are reimbursable through the Federal Highway Bridge Program. So the project history, as you've heard before, through the environmental process for the Bon Air Bridge replacement, the city worked with various resource agencies, and several permits were required for the bridge project. And as part of obtaining those permits, the city agreed to do certain mitigations. Some of those mitigations occurred with the bridge, some of them occurred at the side at the same time as the bridge. And then there were a handful that were sectioned off, which have become this mitigations project that we're asking you to approve tonight. The primary driving forces, there were a lot of environmental constraints and permits, but the primary driving factors for the mitigation project that we're talking about tonight is the Bay Conservation Development Commission, BCDC, and also the Regional Water Quality Control Board, that have triggered the improvements that you're going to see described tonight. So there's 4 different areas of town that these are proposed to occur in. One is along Magnolia Avenue. We have some stormwater improvements, a couple of projects in Piper Park, And then 2 of the city's public docks are scheduled for replacement. This shows where those locations are on the map. And then for reference, the star there is the actual Bon Air Bridge. The first one is Magnolia Avenue Stormwater Project. So this is Regional Water Quality Control Board requirement. This is to compensate for the imperviousness of the new bridge. When stormwater falls on it, there's no opportunity to treat that stormwater before it gets into the creek. So to mitigate that, we worked with the water board and we came up with a plan that includes widening an existing ditch along Magnolia Avenue. And what that does is it lets that ditch hold a little bit more water, lets the water go a little bit more slowly so that it can perk into the ground. And so, and then the grasses in the ditch also help to clean the water of any pollutants. But it also helps reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that gets to the creek by giving it an opportunity to percolate through the ground. This is the bottom is the engineering drawing section that shows essentially what we're doing. Here you're standing on the ditch or on the pathway in the photo. This is on the east side of Magnolia. You're looking south. And so in the photo, the arrow is pointing to the ditch. There is a ditch there. It's kind of overgrown, but between the street and the path. And then the bottom just shows it's basically being widened by a couple of feet on the bottom and then deepened by about a foot. And then some of the bank area is being carved out. And this will let the ditch hold more water and give it an opportunity to get cleaned before it ultimately either ends up in the creek or infiltrates through groundwater.
Hey, Julian, I'm sorry, just a quick question. Are there any safety concerns with putting a ditch right by a bike path? You know, is there any kind of safety so somebody riding a bike doesn't ride into the ditch?
Yeah, so the ditch is actually there today. All we're doing is deepening it a little bit and laying back the slope, but it has a 2-to-1 slope. This is actually a little exaggerated here, but this is we kept the Caltrans standard for the offset, the shoulder. So there's at least 2 feet between where the path is and where the ditch starts to go down. And it's not going to be concrete. It's just going to be grass as it is today. So this meets all the Caltrans requirements for site of a bike path. The next location is Piper Park. There's a couple of things going on here. Up in the upper left-hand corner is where the existing dog park is today. It used to be a tidal marsh. And so as part of getting the BCDC permit for this project, we're required to convert that area back into a tidal marsh. Fortunately, they are allowing us to build a new dog park with the same funding source. So that's another component of this. And then because we have federal aid funding in this, we have to make everything ADA accessible. So there's areas of the parking lot that need to be brought up to standards. So you'll have compliant ADA parking stalls. And then also the bathroom that's closest to where the new dog park is will be renovated. So it's ADA compliant also. So here's just a snapshot. The yellow rectangle here is the kind of the outline of the existing dog park. And then the black dotted lines kind of show the new tidal marsh that will encompass about 2/3 of that and then extend out a little bit more into the slough area. And then on the right is the portion of the engineering plan. It basically shows it's going to be kind of like a lookout area. So there's going to be a DG path. There's going to be some plaques that are going to describe what the tidal marsh is and some benches and things like that.
Julian, can I ask just a very general, somewhat naive question? Earlier on the runoff, so this is part of the engineering to say the imperviousness of Bon Air, you know, puts so much more water, and we're going to build something that equally, you know, compensates with filtrated water. I mean, is there an attempt to, you know, kind of equalize, you know, the environmental impact?
Yeah, so there's definitely a formula. There's engineering. And there's a requirement if you disturb more than an acre, you have to go through certain measures of cleaning your stormwater. And so because of the bridge footprint and the fact that there's no opportunity on the bridge to clean the stormwater before it gets into the creek, we were allowed to offset that with a similar amount of cleaning somewhere else. So as you may recall, one of those options was we'll remove a couple of lanes of Magnolia to the same size as what the bridge is, and then there's no net impact.
Okay.
But there were a bunch of components to that. And when we did the final engineering analysis, we found that this ditch actually calculated a lot higher than the preliminary calculations that were done. And we found that we were able to compensate for the cleaning all of the stormwater that would fall on the bridge just by widening this one ditch. Mainly because there's a lot more water going through there. There's a bunch of pipes that come off the hill. So you have an opportunity, even though the footprint is a lot smaller, you have an opportunity to clean a lot more stormwater than what would ordinarily just fall off the bridge. And so that's how those calculations
And
work.
is that something that BCDC and the water board signs off on? They want to see and make sure that that's environmentally
So-
mitigating?
That one is the water quality control board only. BCDC don't have any part in the Magnolia portion of this, but
Okay.
yes, we had to submit calculations to them showing that we were doing an equivalent filtration to the footprint of the bridge, and they had to sign off on that as part of the permit process.
Okay, and sorry, just one more question. And the tidal marsh, what is that offsetting?
There's a couple of issues that BCDC had with the project that have to do with access to the shore. And then there's also some disturbed areas near the bridge. So the bridge profile overall is similar to what it was initially, but it is a little bit lower as you get closer to the banks based on the depth of the girders. And so BCDC flagged that as restricting some access to the creek because now there was an area of the creek that wouldn't have the head clearance for recreational use. So that was the trigger for the docks and then also for the tidal marsh. And then also the tidal marsh and the first bullet point here was that there was an addition of fill because the bridge is a little bit wider. The abutments and the footprint of the shore are a little bit wider. And so BCDC's concern is access to the shoreline and maintaining the shoreline. And so to compensate for that, BCDC had the two triggers, which was the tidal marsh and then also the docks.
Thank you.
I have a question. Could you go to the Piper Park projects main page there? And the yellow outline shows the parking lot. Will that be repaved also?
The parking lot in total will not be repaved, not with the mitigation project
Okay.
anyway. But the two far corners of it where there's currently handicap parking stalls, those will be repaved to current ADA standards. When the project's all over, we've had to make some repairs out at Piper Park because there are some bad areas.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to do so, but we have held off on repaving the parking lot and the access into the parking lot until this project is completely finished. We've also had a lot of work on Doherty and PG&E's done a lot of
Right.
work. And we want to wait till those projects are over and then we'll evaluate the repaving of the parking lot after, but it is not part of this project.
Are there, just off the cuff, are there known EV charging station money that's available from any of the current federal grants that we could add in there?
Unfortunately, because this project has federal funding, we have to be very careful with the scope and
Okay.
it went through an environmental review. Any changes like that to the project scope would send this project back 6 months in the
No,
in the
all right.
timeline. But there are outside of this project, there are other local and state grants out there for EVs that we look at when they come through.
Okay.
So this was the accessibility portion of it. This is the restroom that will be upgraded. So all the facilities there meet all the ADA building code standards. This is a photo of the existing parking space that's striped for ADA accessibility, but it doesn't meet all the current standards. So these will be restriped, remarked, they'll be repaved so they conform with the slopes. And there's ADA spaces at both ends of the parking lot and they will all be repaved. So as I mentioned, we do get a new dog park. So the location map in the upper right shows that it's going kind of south of the tennis courts and east of the CMPA building. And there's a photo here standing at the back of the corner of the tennis courts looking across where it will be. Couple of exhibits here. Basically, it'll have a small dog area, big dog area. It'll be fenced. It'll have the usual corral entrance for dogs. And then it'll have some paving area, kind of staging, and then a DG area, and then it'll get into the grass area. And I guess fake fire hydrants is the thing that you put in dog parks this now. So there'll be fake fire hydrants and things like that throughout the park.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
The photo lower left just is so nice and green, and
It doesn't stay that way.
is the dog park gonna, what change is going to take place?
So what you see in the foreground here, so in the very foreground, there's like the back corner of the tennis courts, and then you see this concrete path. So what you'll see is behind the concrete path, there'll be another area about equivalent in size. It'll be pavers. That'll be the entrance into the dog park. And then beyond that, there'll be a strip of decomposed granite that will be the entrance into the dog park. And then beyond that, it'll be all the grass that's there. We're not taking out any of the grass. It'll just at the entrance, there'll be pavers and some decomposed granite, but the bulk, the majority of the dog park will be grass as what is out there today.
And that is majority of that's fronting Doherty, the grass.
Yeah, the grass will be all on the Doherty side. Yeah. The basically all the hardscape, the transition from the path into the dog park all takes place right next to the path. So it'll kind of look like a wider path. And they did it as a gradual transition. So it goes from concrete to pavers to decomposed granite and then to grass.
Thank you.
So it'll be more of a transition.
So Julian, on that same question, I participated in, I think they called it Canine Commons when we had the public process in your predecessor. And I was out there several times. Will there be opportunities for public to weigh in on the way the park is outfitted, or are we done with that?
So it's my understanding that the design that we see here is a result of that public
Conversation,
process.
yeah.
Now, that was 6 or 7 years ago,
Yeah.
and if the things in the dog world have changed where we can make small changes, but like I mentioned, this has already gone through a process with the federal funding and we have an environmental document. So we have to be really careful not to
Okay.
make any significant changes. But, obviously if people are using blue fire hydrants now instead of red ones or something like that, we can make minor changes.
I think I think one of the things that came up when I attended one of those meetings was that people asked if there was opportunities to donate, like we do to the rest of the park system, benches and maybe an agility course. I mean, people were interested at that point in seeing if there were opportunities to enhance the park with their own contributions.
So it gets very complicated when you have federal funding in a project. We have
Yeah.
to be really careful. I think what we have here, for the most part, the dog park is grass. So we kind of there are some things that are included in the project that came out of that public process, but we still have a big, vast dog park that if there are other public interests down the road, that we could come back and look at it at a future time. But it would be complicated to incorporate them into this project at this time.
I understand. I'm wearing my age-friendly Larkspur hat, making sure we have plenty of benches for people to sit on who bring their dog and their dog runs around for 30 minutes and they need a place to sit. So,
There are definitely benches.
okay,
Yeah.
when we do the ADA improvements, I'll pay attention to that to make sure we have enough sufficient seating and shade.
I also just want to prepare the council, Mr. Skinner, and I know from past experience elsewhere, the minute you build a dog park,
It's never.
some
good enough.
form of the population of dog owners will tell you made mistakes and that you need to change the dog park. And that'll go on for the rest of time.
Right. Hence why I'm bringing it up, because I spent a lot of time at a dog park lately.
Well, we'll just ask them to go to the parking lot.
So the next slide shows
That was a
public
joke, by the way.
the public dock improvements. So these are two separate public docks. One is at Bon Air Landing Park, which is on South Alicio Drive. The other is the small dock that's next to the Marin Rowing Club's dock. That dock, our dock, the public dock there is currently out of service. It's been out of service for some time. So this project will replace both of those docks with brand new ADA compliant docks in Puerto Madera Creek. And again, because of the federal funding, it will add ADA improvements. So in the case of Bon Air Landing Park, the path from South Alicio down to the dock is not ADA compliant. So this project is actually paying for a new path all the way from from South Alicio Drive through the park, all the way down to the dock. And because that path is a completely different alignment from what's there today to meet ADA, it means we have to redo all of the landscaping. So there'll be quite a few improvements in Bon Air Landing Park that are necessitated by the the ADA requirements. A little bit less so at the Marin Rowing Club. We have to make an ADA parking space there available for the dock. But there will be some improvements beyond just the dock at Bonner Landing Park.
And is that yellow outline our ownership, our property ownership?
No,
the dock?
I stole these exhibits from a Caltrans document that's very Caltransy.
Okay.
Basically, you have to outline an area that says, this is the area we may touch with the project.
Okay.
It's part of the environmental process, and then you just have to make sure you don't go outside of the yellow line when you do your project. So that's where I stole these from.
And Marin Rowing leases from us, if I
correct.
understand correctly.
Yes.
And their leases term is a 10-year term.
That
believe.
I'm not sure, but we have met with them and gone over this project, so they're aware. So here's another environmental slide. It looks very similar to the bridge slides that we showed you back when we were talking about the Bon Air Bridge. Similar constraints. We have the Ridgeway rail and the steelhead in the creek. So we've got similar constraints and similar different portions of the work that I apply to. The steelhead's the easiest one. Basically, you can't work in the water after November 30th, and then you can get back in the water June 15th. Sometimes it's June 30th, depending on the permit. But that basically means all the in-water work has to happen between June and October or November of a year. So that's obviously the docks are going to fall within that window. Portions of the tidal marsh are going to be considered in water. So portions of that work are going to have to fall within those windows. The other is the Ridgeway rail, which is a little bit more complex. Basically, it's no work within, I think it's 500 feet of an active nest. And this time restriction is a lot shorter. You cannot work between January 15th and September 1st of each year. Where there are active nesting Ridgeway rails. So if you look at the bar at the top, you've got the overlapping work windows between the rail and the steelhead. And there's a very little work window where you don't have to worry about any of those constraints. And so as we saw with the bridge, turned into a 4-year project. This, even though it's only a $3 million project, is going to take over a year to complete because there's going to be portions of the year when they can't do the work. And so we're not sure exactly how the contractor is going to schedule his work. This is what we think based on what we know about the permit conditions. I think one of the things we do know is we have put in the contract documents, they need to start the new dog park ASAP because we don't want to go without a dog park. So before they start ripping the old dog park up, we want to make sure we have as much of the new dog park built as possible. So we have something for the dog people to use. So we anticipate the dog park will be one of the first things they do. They'll also probably jump right on the tidal marsh because as soon as they start in about a month, we're going to be in that window where they can work in the water and they don't have to worry about the Ridgeway rail until January 15th. So, you know, a lot of projects you see slowly ramp up. This one, you'll see a whole lot of activity once they get started, probably in about a month for 3 months through January. They'll be doing as much as they can because they don't have any permit constraints other than the in water, but there's a lot of tidal marsh work they can do back upland of the water to start out. Magnolia has the least constraints, and then obviously the parking lot doesn't really have any constraints environmental wise. But the big gap is you're going to see in the tidal marsh, because one of the things we have to do is we have to shape the tidal marsh, we have to dig it out, and then it has to be planted with appropriate plants for what level of marsh it's at. But you need to dig it out and let it sit for a year before you can plant it. So the tidal marsh work is probably going to bookend this project. It'll be the very first components of work, and then it'll be the very end. So we anticipate they'll probably start within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then it'll go right through to January, February of 2024. And that's the brief overview. And again, there is an action item for you to consider tonight, which is awarding the contract to the low bidder, McGuire and Hester.
Thank you for your presentation, Julian. Are there questions from the council members of our Public Works Director regarding his presentation? Vice Mayor Pauls.
Thank you. Yeah, Julian, I have I mean, it looks like the scope is mandated, the funding is 88% provided. From your perspective, what are the risks? what do you think we should be thinking of? I mean, this seems kind of like a template, what risks do you see, or what are some of the parameters here that concern you?
What are the risks with moving forward with the project now? There's, I don't think there's anything that's unique about where we are now that's risky about the project. We could push this off and rebid it, but that has more risks associated with it. This is the lower risk option. The mitigations that we're looking at were mandated as part of the bridge project, and there are timelines that are in place where some of these improvements are to be underway before the bridge is finished. So we're really on a short time frame. The risks you run into now is you only had one bidder, and so you don't really have anybody else's bid to compare that to, and your price may be a little bit higher. But we went through a bid analysis, and we're fairly confident that that's what the bid, that's a legitimate bid price. So I would say there's a lot more risk in putting this off and trying to bid it again and try and get more bidders because of all the permitting processes in place. We've already had to extend a number of the permits, and extending a permit is not sending a form in. For some of these, extending the permit is going through the whole exercise again, paying the fee again, having it go to the BCDC board to get reevaluated. And so, there's risk. Every day we don't start this project, there's risk that one of those permits will get hung up somewhere and won't get issued, or we'll have another condition added to it. So, I see the riskier process is letting it drag out, and that this is kind of the best move forward to make sure that we stay in compliance.
Mr. Mayor, this is Kevin. Unless there's further discussion among members of the council, I'd like to move approval of this construction contract.
I was going to say that was an invitation to a motion. I've ever heard one. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any further council discussion? May we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Campbell.
Yes.
Councilmember Hara.
Yes.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Paulson.
Yes.
Mayor Hilmer.
Yes, motion passes unanimously. Mr. City Manager, do you have anything to add? That concludes our business this evening. Thank you very much for your participation. Our next meeting is September the 21st. We are adjourned.